Hi, my name is Hunter May, the owner of May Crochets, and I'm making this video to tell you all about my universal patterns. This video is somewhat of a part 2 to my last video about made to measure patterns. If you're interested in watching this video, you can watch it here or here. I can never remember which one, but look at the corner. Universal patterns are basically made to measure patterns with something else on top of it that makes it really cool. So quickly just going over made to measure patterns, they're interactive, calculatable PDF patterns where you can input your body measurements and then the gauge that you're working with. That way you can use any weighted yarn. And then behind the scenes, my PDF will calculate exactly the rows and stitches you need throughout the entire pattern, and the pattern will fit your body absolutely perfect. This also allows for customizable garments as well. So if you usually like your tank tops longer or cropped, you can fully customize it without doing any work yourself. So that's actually a very short look at what made to measure is. So I'm gonna be kind of referencing it throughout this video, so I highly recommend checking my made to measure video out first before watching this video. Before I go into what universal patterns are, I'm just gonna kind of briefly explain why I created them. When I was first learning how to crochet, I started getting more confidence in wanting to design my own things. A lot of that was garments. I really wanted to design my own clothing. Now that I have more experience in being able to actually design clothing with more confidence and know more about what I'm doing, I realized that a lot of people are probably back where I was before, of wanting to make their own garments but not necessarily sure how to do it. The math to make sure that something's gonna fit you is really intimidating, and making sure that you understand the construction of garments. Like, how do I make sure the arms of the sweater are gonna fit me? And what do I start out with the collar to make sure it goes around my neck? So many things are really hard and complicated. I decided it would be super cool to help people through it while also letting people be able to use their creativity and customize it in any way that they want. So with that being said, that's where my universal patterns came in. You're gonna hurt yourself. So what are my universal patterns? We're gonna look at very high level and break it down. So my universal patterns are basically like blank slate patterns that you can do any stitch you want. So it can be crochet, Tunisian crochet, or knit. And I will give you step by step how you construct whatever the pattern is, a sweater, a cardigan, with the stitch measurements that you provide me. Let's say that it is a drop shoulder sweater pattern because I have that pattern available. It's my universal drop shoulder sweater pattern. Let's say you want to do double crochets for the whole pattern. You would input the gauge for your double crochet with the yarn that you're using into the pattern, and then you would input your body measurements. So you would do, this is my chest circumference, this is my arm circumference, and down the line. And then throughout the pattern, once you input all of that in my made to measure pattern, which remember you watched the video, I will then use all that information to calculate the rows and stitches you need to do to make a drop shoulder sweater pattern, which goes bottom up. So I'll walk you through the construction of how many stitches you should start with, how many rows until you start the armholes or the neck circumference, walk you through how to decrease for the neck circumference, how you sew it together. So it's like a normal pattern of how you make it, but you're able to add your customizations over top. Customizations kind of depend on the pattern itself. So everything is customizable by body measurements, basic measurements like I talked about, like your chest circumference, your arm circumference, your neck circumference. You can customize the length, but other things that are different than normal patterns of which you can customize are things like the ease. So really quickly, an ease is like the extra circumference that a t-shirt or anything has that's extra from your body measurement. So with the ease, my patterns allow for the body ease, so like the sweater's body like here, and then also the sleeve ease, so how oversized is it going to be on the sleeve. Other customizations include the ribbing length. So for the sweater, I allow you to adjust how wide you want the ribbing length to be on the collar, on the bottom, and also the cuff as well. Also the collar depth. So on the sweater, you can customize if you want a low collar or maybe just a shorter collar. You can also do a V-neck or a crew neck. There's so many customization options, and it makes for so many unique patterns, which I will share a lot of pictures of my testers and what they've made with my universal patterns, and they're all so unique, and that's one of the reasons I love my universal patterns. Some of the benefits of the universal pattern, I've talked about a few of them. The way that it helps you with designing your own pattern, and there's not a lot of thought that needs to go into it. You just need to think of the design, input all the inputs, and I do all the math and tell you how to construct it and design it throughout the pattern, so you don't have to think super hard. Another thing is it's reusable. So I have a little button in the top right of my universal patterns where you can just click, that clears all the inputs, and you could start fresh with a whole new pattern. And you can see through all my tester photos that these patterns are so wildly different from each other. You buy this one pattern, you could get so much money's worth out of it because you could create so many different types of sweaters, of vests, of tank tops, and they'll be still very different, but all from one pattern, which I think is so cool. And then on top of it, just the additional benefits of made to measure, like the size inclusivity of the patterns, allowing you to input any body measurement. So you could make your parents a unique customized sweater. You could make your kids some tank tops. The options are truly endless. It can be any body size whatsoever. So diving in a little bit more on how it works. So you input the gauge that you're going to be using. The gauge essentially tells the pattern the stitch height and width that you're using, which behind the scenes for you is the stitch you're using and the yarn you're using, the hook or needle size you're using, and then the pattern knows that one stitch is this height and this width, and then it does all the math for that. It can be any stitch you want. It could be crochet, it could be knit, it could be Tunisian crochet, and then throughout the pattern, when the instructions differ between those three crafts, I lay out exactly what you're gonna do. So if you're doing crochet, you're gonna do these steps. If you're doing knit, you're gonna do these steps. Tunisian crochet, do these steps. That is littered throughout the pattern where it's needed. Don't be afraid that it's gonna be super confusing when you get there and you're gonna have to figure out a lot of it. You really don't. I help you throughout all the way through. So in the made to measure pattern, like you watched, I walk through how you can input your measurements into the PDF and how it calculates everything for you. The universal patterns do the same thing, so when I'm saying that your inputs for the gauge are helping me calculate throughout the pattern, that's what I mean. So I'm just gonna show you what my universal patterns kind of look like. This is my universal drop shoulder cardigan pattern. So first, beginning, I just talked to you about how you download the pattern, how you edit it. You can watch more about exactly how to in my made to measure video, which you watched, right? And there is a link here talking about commonly asked questions with the pattern if you need some additional help, or you can email me. The materials, so the materials fully depend on what pattern you're doing. Are you doing crochet, Tunisian crochet, or knitting? And I would recommend using the size that your yarn label suggests, or like Tunisian crochet, I usually go 2 millimeters larger than my yarn suggests. And then these notes here, it kind of depends on what stitch you're using. So when I say decrease, crochet decrease is gonna look different than knit decrease. Also, like turning your work, crochet, you do your turning chain and then you turn. Tunisian crochet, the turn is essentially your return pass. And then knitting, turn your work. I have some tips for if you're knitting the cardigan, like if you want to do the ribbing first and then work up. So there's just notes on construction. A lot of my patterns have that, like, oh, if you want to work this vertical instead, this is how you would do it instead of working bottom up like the pattern has written, things like that. Which is right here actually. I tell you how you could work it from the side to side instead of bottom up and what you could do for that. And then this is what it looks like to fill out. So I'll walk through this with you. You have to input the measurement types you're using. So if you're gonna use inches, centimeters, you just have to make sure that you use the same unit of measure throughout the entire pattern. So chest circumference, I'm gonna just try to do this off of memory. I'm like 14, I think, 6. And then length is however long you want the pattern to be. So the cardigan, I'm gonna say 20. And at the very bottom of the pattern, I always have charts that say just the generic sizing. That way you're like, what do you people usually do for like a regular size cardigan? Here's the length that you can do. What is a medium size upper arm measurement? Here's what it usually is. And this can help if you are wanting to use my pattern to grade your own pattern. If you're interested in pattern designing, but you're a little worried about pattern grading, which is how you do the math to figure out the sizing for each size, you can just plug in the measurements at the bottom of pattern and I will give the rows and stitches you need for each of those sizes. And these sizes are based off of the universally accepted sizes, so I recommend plugging these ones in. So going back up, now we can do the ribbing. So this is for the cardigan specifically. So what body ribbing? I usually do like 2 inches, so I'm just gonna throw 2 in there for the sleeve and the inside, so that's like where the buttons are. Then you do your ease. So for body ease, you can do whatever you want. You could do 6 inches because I typed in, or I selected inches up here. Then the sleeve ease, we're gonna do a little bit less, we're gonna do 3. And then the body gauge, we'll say it's 12 rows for 4 inches and 15 stitches for 4 inches. You can also input the weight of your gauge, which allows you to calculate how many yards you're gonna need for this pattern, which is awesome. The ribbing gauge, this is so you can use any ribbing stitch you want. It can be whatever. You could add knit ribbing onto your crochet project. You could do literally anything. The customizations are up to you. So I'm just gonna throw some more measurements in here that mean nothing right now. Then you can type the yarn's yard and gram information. And this is what'll tell you how many yards or meters you're gonna need for your project. So if you enter yards here, you'll get yards here. Or if you meters. And then yeah, throughout the pattern, you'll see like here, for the gauge that I input, I have to start with 87 stitches and 47 rows tall. That's the math. And you go through and it'll tell you exactly how to construct the pattern for everything that you input. And I just think it's so cool. And I love seeing what everyone creates with it. And then to prove to you that my little clear inputs button works, clear, boom. Now it's fresh and you can create a whole new cardigan that is completely different, a whole new stitch. You could do a crochet cardigan that's super extra long, and then you could do like a crop knit cardigan. Completely different stitch, completely different look, and just build up your closet. Fully customized by you. So many of my universal pattern testers have told me that they absolutely love my patterns. I love to see other people's creativity. That's one of my favorite things. I love being able to help people be creative, and that's kind of one of the main reasons I did my universal patterns, because I love the math, but I'm creative, but you guys are so much more creative sometimes, but maybe you're lacking a little bit on left brain than I am. I'm lacking a little bit on right brain, so together we can help each other, and that's one of my favorite things. I love seeing how people's designs turn out and what they all changed and customized, and how it just shines their creativity while also showing that my math works, which is so exciting for me. If you're a beginner and you're not sure if this really applies to you or not, I would first say, since you watched the Made to Measure video, to download the square stitch calculator that I talked about in that video. It is a free pattern that will just help you kind of just get an idea of how my interactive PDFs work. And then once you're comfortable with editing it and saving it and things like that, you can definitely dive into these universal patterns. Skill level's kind of hard with the patterns because I feel like they're well understood as you walk through, but I think what makes them very difficult is choosing a difficult stitch. So if you're a beginner, I would recommend going with an easier stitch. Maybe you can do like a color graph on the front to make it a little more interesting if you'd like. You honestly pick how difficult it's going to be. So be nice to yourself for at least the first one. Once again, you can make so many of them. Do just a basic one right away, and then once you're comfortable with the format and the construction, you could definitely do a little bit more difficult stitch. So right now, the universal patterns that I have released currently is my universal drop shoulder sweater pattern, which drop shoulder just means that the seam for the shoulder is lower, which technically this one is. Like you can see the seam is right here. And then a drop shoulder cardigan pattern, which is basically not a sweater, it's a cardigan. Then I have a universal vest pattern, and then a universal tank pattern, like a tank top pattern. And I have 2 patterns coming out sometime this winter. At least I'm getting them tested this winter that I'm still working on behind the scenes. The first is universal pants, which I am extremely excited about. Then the other one that I'm working on is a universal raglan sweater. I am so excited to get those out because those were 2 patterns that I was very intimidated by. Like pants, the math for pants, and then the math for raglans to make sure everything works out going top down. It's very intimidating, but so far I have not had to frog my sweater, so hopes are high. Hopes are really high. Yeah, stay tuned for those patterns released, or the testing call for those, and check out all the ones I have already released. You can fully design your whole closet with just these few patterns. If there are any other universal patterns that you think would be super cool, I've been kind of bouncing in my head maybe like a collar, like button-up universal pattern. I'm not quite sure yet. If you have any ideas, just staple things in your closet that you think would be an interesting universal pattern, please comment them down below. I need some ideas to expand my universal world of patterns. I think that's all I have for you. I hope that I explained everything well through this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to me already, I would love it if you subscribed. I make a lot of different types of videos, all fiber arts related, and I would love for you to watch more of them. Once again, all of my universal patterns are linked down below. They're on my website, and I really hope you go check them out. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again soon.